Cassandra Troyan is a writer whose work explores the terror of becoming female at the intersections of gender, violence, sex work, and capital. They are the author of several books and chapbooks of poetry, most recently A Theory in Tears, Annotations and Cases for Freedom and Prostitution, Penning Editions. They teach as a senior lecturer in the Department of Design at Linnaeus University in Kalmar, Sweden. Please join me in welcoming Cassandra Troyan.
Thank you, Zach, for having me, and very excited to read alongside friends and poets, and to have many of my friends here tonight who I haven't seen in a while, so it's always heartening. I'm going to read a couple sections from a book that I recently finished that's the sort of continuation of this text, called Freedom and Prostitution. And within this, I'm looking at these different histories between forms of gendered violence and particular struggles and sort of resistance against it, and sort of shifts through kind of the ways that's shaped sort of through militaristic, imperialist, or sort of carceral influences. And specifically within this text, there's a lot of reference and sort of texts and words of sex workers and the different ways they've been sort of in retaliation to the violence that their communities have experienced. And I won't read this section from the work tonight, but it really also is paying tribute to the 49 women who were killed by Gary Ridgway, or the Green River Killer, in the Pacific Northwest in the United States in the 80s, which became a very important moment in terms of sex worker organizing and sort of galvanizing around that, and drawing attention to these women who had otherwise been ignored by society. And within this work as a whole is dedicated to sex workers, but especially Eileen Wuornos, who, if you're not aware who she is, there was a movie made about her starring Charlize Theron, and she won an Oscar because of how believingly ugly she could be, even though she was a very beautiful actress, basically. But she was sort of seen as the first American serial killer, and then she was convicted of killing 6 men and sentenced to death for murder. And she's in many ways become the kind of patron saint of sex workers, because she killed these men in defense, and the first sort of incident being a very violent incident of rape. And she was also quite conscious of the ways that the sort of media spectacle surrounding her trial was about monetizing her death, essentially. So I wanted to read a little bit of one of the sort of intro parts of this book, which is an interview with her and Nick Broomfield, who is a documentary filmmaker who is making a film about her right before she was executed. And in conversation, she says, "You sabotaged my ass society, and the cops and the system. A raped woman got executed. It was used for books and movies and shit. Ladder climbs, re-elections, and everything else. I got to put the finger in all your faces. Thanks a lot. You're inhumane. You're an inhumane bunch of fucking living bastards and bitches, and you're gonna get your asses nuked in the end, and pretty soon it's coming. 2019, a rock's supposed to hit you anyhow, and you're all gonna get nuked. You don't take fucking human life like this and just sabotage it and rip it apart like Jesus on the cross and say thanks a lot for all the fucking money I made off of you, and not care about a human being, the truth being told. Now I know what Jesus was going through." And she sort of ends that by saying, "Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass." And with this text, I feel it's important to say that there are many instances of gendered violence and other types of sort of intimate violence, and to really give people, if you feel that you need to leave, or that you have the agency to respond in whatever ways feel necessary for you. And there's some sort of figures of the sort of dead man of a soldier, and a chorus, which is a chorus of sex workers who you see that sort of are present throughout the text. The dead man is not finished with you yet. You could see him before he even arrived. He comes back after his first deployment and goes to your parents' house to look for you, but you were already gone. Your sister answered the door to say you don't live there anymore. Euthanasia, a solitude meditating in a bay window, holding a shit-varnished template, placate the skin, tear back the flesh into a gender of mourning. You wish you could never see him again. You wish he had never found you. Crying on a platform like it's mid-century, you've got a handkerchief to prove that nothing gets better with time. Your hands are still freezing. You've killed yourself 1,000 times in this city. You've prayed without sound. You couldn't believe when you opened your eyes, your hands at your chest, the reluctance of loneliness, catastrophe without break, no angels in the hallway, no messianic luxury. You walk up a gilded staircase surrounded by 1,000 mirrors, no reflection, all wreckage and warning. Bitches get what they deserve. You go to a room and the soldier opens the door. He lets you in, he kisses you and asks you why you've kept him waiting. He doesn't wait for an answer. He grabs you, undresses you as he pulls you to the bathroom. You struggle, but he squeezes your throat, lifts you up against the wall by your neck. The room goes black as he tightens his grip. You don't remember where you are or how long you've been out. You wake up to him standing above you, hissing on you. Smiling, he looks down and says, "Good morning, sweetheart." You ask him if you're going to die. He says, "I'm going backwards in time, lifting at 3 a.m., watching the sun come up, waiting for when we meet again on the other side of war. Death reopens a channel to the past," he says. "When you almost die, you don't cry for humanity or yourself. No grievances, no tears, candle wax melodies playing in the background." He says a real man is the terror in the landscape, both local and sublime. He says he's come across so many graves, so many mass graves, a dozen more, a dozen less, but there is no measurement for the cruelty of the terrain. He says, even in a civil war, there are many sides. He drags you by your hair from the bathroom to the bedroom. You scream, he kicks you and tells you not to resist. He throws you on the bed. He climbs on top of you. He says, "I don't want to fuck you just yet." He starts to choke you again, the weight of his body pressing you down into the bed. He throws a pillow on your face. He starts to smother you. Under this pressure, you begin to cry. Your sobbing shakes your whole body until his fucking takes over and you wait for him to finish, leaving you relieved and shivering. He picks you up, he holds you, and tells you not to cry. To die tonight, to die in this bed. The cruelty of compulsion, you think you might puke. In your attempt to find a language without boundaries, you're speaking like any other dead girl waiting for the sunset, a small spiritual contract in this coercive forever. You looked for slight entrances, but were never relieved. The force of biology and amorous terror, you ask, what kills a man? What breaks him? Abolish this encounter, marking you as disposable. Instead, your resilience a threat. God, guns, goals in the face of imminent cause, reflecting this sensitive beauty. A human diction, holding you up by the chest until your tits rip off and you're never forced to be a woman again. He called the summer a vision, a fulfillment of orders. The men kept returning to the house. Each time they would drive up to it, a shade of fog grew belly first, crowded in, the driveway relapsing, a ceaseless diversion. You make the necessary arrangements, set the signals, the details, decoys, and wait. You refuse the dream, but it returns to you. There are only singularities clinging with a volatile touch. The scene of his appearance revealed, an obsession with recognition, recoiling for affirmation, a kiss, a night alone in a house, in a field, all that land to be lost to. In bed, you wake up in his arms and roll over to slit his throat and watch as the blood chokes the sheets. To die tonight, to die in this bed. A real man, there is only one, and for him that is the only light left to bear, to create what breaks you. When you left the bed, took all his guns, burned down his house, and he never had to be a man again. But you are like most women, unafraid of the truth, when every night an insect is your father, the entire world an electrical current. Strange how it's only a glimpse, the weight of holding all the rage that no one else can be bothered to carry. A civic duty, this work of love, to be abased by it, the particularities of refusal, the kindness of its loss, and your freedom and its destruction. The chorus arrives, and you're on the move again, and no longer afraid. You place your body on other bodies. They are full of erotic potential, redirected rather than ignored. How to build without producing, each day another set of obstacles, linked into commonality, a pleasure shared, to never be alone again, to cross it all out. One by one, records of actions combine into another larger body, a tactile, expanding body that communicates beyond and without, and in this unwieldy, shifting mass, a joy not unlike revenge fills you with possibility. You continue to work, not out of habit, but to take up this joy from within, an immersive tactic. Passing coins of spit, the sex of exchange that aligns you in this otherwise random coupling, a momentary release, sugar slip. He tells you to get up off the bed and undress more slowly this time while looking at him in the eyes. You bend over and the world's upside down, your ass in the sun, your ass is the sun, a currency of light that refracts at the last moment as you watch his face unfold as he comes and it drips to the floor. You pick up his face and try it on, sticky sensations turn to a formal and pleasing response, and you open your mouth to breathe in your air, to win against the memory of that one time you almost died in the Trump Hotel as a man was laughing above you, and you could feel yourself fading until there's a faint scratching coming from outside, bristling, millions of follicles crumbling, the world slowly eating itself. Hooves, scales, cut the shell, tear the sack, hooks dragging, rotten eggs, and you knew the chorus was on their way. You create a ceremony. You sit in a room facing forward, making small sounds. Since you cannot look at anyone, you are permitted to cry. Weeping bodies make a rustling that begins slowly, gaining in heat and friction. The entire building vibrating, shifting in landscapes, territories, continents, until the dead are here. This is not a fantasy. You are in the room with the dead. You raise the dead. From the deserts, from the mass graves, from the shallow graves, from the oceans, from the rivers, from the lakes, from the sewers, from the city dumps, from the forest, from the ditches, out of the grave and into the streets. You gather with tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands, then you lose count as they try to smash you all, smear you against glass, ground you into the street. You move your broken limbs and continue as your individual body is unheroic, unassuming, as you begin to move across the city like a smear. This goes on for a long time. You limp around, you dig a burrow for the earth to surround you. You regenerate, you wander at night looking for others. You create diversion, traps, tripwires to alarm you of intruders. You share food with others. You are on different continents, yet this doesn't matter since you are now so many you can bridge across them. You go to the capital to show one of your arms that was found at a dump site with some of the flesh removed. You weep, you sing, you chant in unison, you rain curses on the killers. You start to speak and the crowd goes silent. Any ritual killer who attempts to take life will be punished. If he thinks a prostitute has no worth, make sure he does not live to tell his own story. You say it now and confirm it, that as far as you are concerned, you babes are ready for them. They should come with their charms. You will deal with them. Now you are as potent as a bomb. You've heard the last gurglings of power, indebted to an order of sun. A cracking pelvis, a shattering jaw, a palace burns. You stand silent. You start again. You must be terrified of this life until you destroy it. The whore must believe in revenge. Let's look at this crowbar. What do you see? You call it a process. You call it freedom. You call it deflecting. You call it a bouquet of errors. Instead of running, now you hunt. You remember you are the spider. You've taken over a local TV station, and in place of a news anchor, you talk of your plans and command the frame. You'll get him first. Yeah, you're going to get him first. When you find him, he's going to be sorry. It is as simple as that. Resistance. How does it devastate and mark you? No more healing is justice, no more vigils or candlelit sympathy, no more compromises to steal away a cyclical motion of harm. How you'd wear the night on your chest, all the beauty in your refusal, your bravery pushing through, thought you couldn't go on, a feather of the time you spoke, while you cut the world in stars and said it's not the end, to not relinquish, to not retreat. Remember how he said he'd like to keep your bodies in groups that he called clusters. He would drive by and think of the women placed there, of others he'd like to add. Bodies now social accumulation. What revives? What kills? The collection of your skin peeling away in thick slabs, your limbs falling off, your remains, your bones, your smiles, your tears, all the parts slipping into a pile, a spilling architecture, cracking as it grows until it forms chains of tensile structures, growing and shrinking through teething and molting and new breathing.